Be careful when you enter Big Sky Country. You might just encounter some big mysteries. Thank you to all my current subscribers and those of you listening for joining me for these scary stories. If you like these terrifying tales and have not done so already, please hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you make sure not to miss a single video. Whether it's aliens, ghosts, cryptids, glitches in the Matrix, or unknown entities, these 7 reportedly true scary stories should give you some good nightmare fuel for bedtime. Remember, life, at times, is much scarier than we like to admit. Enjoy. Alien Creature Encounter by horrorbxtch. This happened the summer of 2016. I was staying at my grandparents' house for a few weeks in the summer while my mom was on vacation. They lived near Grand Junction, Colorado. Their house is by a large river, and the whole area has a ton of trees, plant life, and animals. I was letting my dog out to go potty one night. There's hardly any lights around their property, so I grabbed a flashlight. My dog is outside for maybe a minute before I hear her start viciously growling and barking like I've never heard before. She's growled, barked at animals or people outside before, but this was more aggressive than I'd ever heard her. I start making my way over to my dog to investigate. I make it about halfway to my dog and I freeze dead in my tracks. I'm pointing my flashlight in the direction she's facing, and I see the most unsettling thing I've ever seen. At first I think I'm just imagining it or tripping out, but there was no denying. It was clear as day. It was about 3 to 4 feet, a rectangular figure but with rounded edges. Imagine like a 4-foot-tall Twinkie. It was this gross, translucent tan flesh color, like the color of a naked mole rat. There was no apparent face or limbs. All I saw was a bunch of tentacle, leg-looking things protruding all down the front and side of its body. The way it was moving was creepy. At first it was sort of gently rocking side to side, and then I swear it started taunting my dog, like running from one spot to another to mess with her. At this point I got too scared it would do something to my dog, so I ran to her, snatched her up, and booked it inside and locked the door. When I peeked back outside, the thing was gone. I don't think anything has ever disturbed me that much in real life before. My body wouldn't stop shaking for probably 25 minutes after I got inside. The most messed up part of this is the next day, I told my aunt I saw a weird alien bug-looking creature outside the night before. She then said, "I've seen some weird crap out there," and proceeded to explain seeing the exact thing I saw. Same color, shape, lots of tentacle centipede-looking appendages, and the icing on the cake for me was when she said it kept rocking from side to side. I said, "You're kidding me, that's exactly what I saw last night." We both got chills and flipped out because it confirmed it wasn't our imagination. Ghost Soldier in Class A's by Mad Patriot 82. It was in the middle of April 2010, and my unit was back in the States from Afghanistan, and we were demobilizing at Camp Shelby. Everything had been going well at Camp Shelby at this point. The days were relaxed, and I was actually getting full night's sleep. And by full, I mean about 4 to 5 hours compared to the 0 to 2 hours that I was getting downrange. But there was this one night, I woke up in the middle of the night. It seemed to be around 2 or 3 in the morning. I felt that I was awakened by something. something other than just my usual insomnia. I believe that I was awoken by a feeling that something was about to happen, but didn't know what. I looked around the barracks and I didn't see anything, but the feeling was still there. I stayed awake for a few more minutes, scanning the room before starting to drift back to sleep. As soon as I fell back to sleep, from out of nowhere, I felt this insane amount of pressure on my chest and saw a man with a pale face, black combed-over hair, with Vietnam-era Class A's pushing down on my chest. My first thought was, what the hell? I was paralyzed, literally. I couldn't feel anything below my waist. I had this tight knot in my throat that kept me from being able to yell out or say anything. My legs had this numbing feeling, and no matter what I tried, I couldn't move. It took me a second to realize what was happening, and when I did have the realization of what was going on, I freaked the hell out. All I was able to do was just stare at this man, holding me down, making it hard for me to breathe. He finally let off my chest and began what seemed to be violently shaking me by grabbing my shoulders, although I wasn't moving. This crap seemed like it was going on forever already. As he was shaking me, he started yelling something, but it was inaudible. Mouth just moving, no words coming out. At this point, the fear began to subside and was being replaced by pure anger. I just looked at him and mouthed the words, "Get off." As he was shaking me, his maniacal demeanor subsided and stopped to look at me with a look of confusion. I mouthed the words, "Get the hell off me." I began looking around just to see if anyone else was awake and seeing this crap. But there was no one. No one that I could see anyways. So after mouthing the words, the ghost then stood up, walked to the foot of my bunk, stared at me for a few seconds, and with his head cocked to the side, still looking confused, turned around and faded through the wall. After a minute, I pushed the blankets off, which were completely drenched in sweat. I was trying to figure out what I should do, if anything. The night's silence was horrible after that. The sounds inside the barracks were amplified. My guard was up and there was no possibility of any more sleeping that night. I only told my wife of this, but only because she has had her own encounters with spirits. I still think about it now and then, chalking it up to being fatigued from all the stuff we did before and during the transit home, or maybe it was just a nightmare, a very vivid and realistic nightmare. I just don't know though. I am still not sure if what I went through was real, but I do question it quite a bit. The Creature by Queen of Horror 666. This is in a female point of view. To give you a little insight about me, this story happened when I was 14 years old. I was at my friend Emily's house since back then I lived there for personal reasons. Anyway, it was about 1 a.m. and her parents were gone for the night at her grandma's house. We were watching horror movies and vegging out on snacks like we usually would every weekend night. After our movie, I got up to pee and let her know I'd be back. She nodded before opening up her laptop to message her boyfriend at the time. As I walked down her barely lit hallway and came across the bathroom, I heard Emily's voice call out to me to her back porch that was on the right side of the hallway, which immediately struck me as odd because I never saw her leave the room or even walk past me, and why would she be outside anyway? Her voice called to me again, so I couldn't help but walk out to the back porch. It took a lot to scare me, so I wasn't bothered by this. Turned out to be the biggest mistake ever. A red flag should have went off right then and there when her voice became silent as I stepped onto the porch. I called her name softly, but she didn't reply. I called her name once more, but this time louder. And again, silence. I stepped off the porch onto the grass, looking into her wooded backyard. A little irritated now because at the time I figured she was trying to prank scare me like she usually did. It was normal for her. But when I yelled her name again, a voice spoke, but it wasn't hers. It was another woman's voice. "Help me, please. For the love of God, help me!" I heard a woman scream. Okay, now I was officially freaked out because there was no one around for miles besides her one neighbor that lives a little ways into the woods. I found myself not being able to move. Curiosity, maybe? But the bushes started rustling and what looked like a dog stepped out. My first thought, it was her neighbor's dog that must have gotten out again because it had happened before. But when this thing stood up on its hind legs, it was about 7 feet tall. That's when I really froze up. What the hell was this thing? I asked myself. I never met any human that's that tall in my entire life. When it started to stalk towards me, I eyed it carefully. It was walking kind of human-like, but a wobbly like a baby taking its first steps. I found myself not being able to bolt out of there like I should have. I couldn't move. That is until I heard the slider door being opened and the real Emily's voice speak. "Lana, what are you doing out here? I looked around my whole house for you." As soon as she finished her sentence, I bolted as fast as I could and pulled my friend inside before shutting the door and locking it while closing the blinds. I did this to every room, even the basement, locking windows included. All the while, Emily yelling at me, asking me what the hell was going on. I took her arm and raced into her room before slamming her door behind us. When she finally realized how terrified I was and how badly I was shaking, only then did she ask me, "Jesus, Lana, what's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost. What the hell happened?" she asks. I finally calmed down enough to begin telling her what I encountered, but before I got the chance to fully explain what happened, I heard extreme banging on my friend's window, which stunned us both, and we both shot up at least 10 feet in the air. I whispered, "Oh, hell," when I realized I forgot to shut her blinds. I didn't have the heart to turn around, but when Emily's face went pale, I didn't have a choice but to look behind me. I really wish I hadn't. There, that thing was, looking into our bedroom window. I couldn't even begin to explain what it looked like. All I can come up with is that its body was twisted, like someone had just been in a freakish car accident, and it had fur, lots of it, and the eyes glowed much like a cat. A high-pitched noise escaped that thing's throat, making us not only cover our ears, but we both screamed as hard as our lungs would let us. I threw my friend on the floor before zooming into her parents' room to get her dad's .42 rifle. But when I came back, the noise stopped and that creature was gone. Emily was rocking back and forth, holding her knees close to her, shaking and crying hysterically. She had seen its face as clear as I did, and the antlers that it happened to have? To say we were absolutely terrified would be a major understatement. The rest of the night we had all the lights on in the house, and we stayed huddled together in the living room with the rifle right under my legs. Finally, after what seemed like decades, the sun rose and her parents walked through the door. Almost instantly, her dad noticed our fear-stricken expressions and his gun under my legs. They sat down and softly asked us what happened. When I explained it, they shared worried glances before announcing that we were moving. We never asked why. We were just happy to get the hell out of there. To this day, I don't know if it was a skinwalker that some people believe in, or if it was an imposter. What I do know, though, is that it was not human. The Botanical Garden by Heydrich Reinhard 69. Back when I was in first year high school, I was part of this choir where we would sing the songs our school required us to sing, like the national anthem or some church song. To be honest, I wasn't the best singer and only joined for the benefit of skipping class. The skipping class part was great and all, but staying late for practice was kind of a downside, especially when it was before a big school event. One day, we had to practice near the school's botanical garden because the place where we usually practiced was being occupied by another group. Some of the members of the choir were kind of hesitant about practicing near the gardens because there have been a lot of scary stories surrounding the place and no two accounts are the same. I, on the other hand, just wanted practice to be over. We practiced until around 8 or 9 p.m. At around this time, there would be only 2 gates that would be open if one wanted to leave the school. The college gate, which was all the way across from where we practiced, and the track and field gate, which was near, but you had to pass through the garden to get there. Me, being a lazy man, decided to take the shortest route, while the rest wished me luck and went the opposite way. I believe that any place can be creepy as long as it is dark, and the gardens were not an exception. I brought my phone to call my parents. I dialed and it rang once before being answered. I talked into the phone telling my parents where to pick me up, but no answer from them. I stopped the call and called them again. Same thing. No answer from the other side. I called a third time to ask them to pick me up, almost shouting into the phone for an answer, but still no answer. Finally, I gave up and decided to text them. After walking through the garden for about a couple more minutes, I finally reached my waiting destination without incident. It was a creepy walk, and I was kind of relieved that nothing out of the ordinary happened. My parents came after about 15 minutes of waiting, but something was off. When they stopped the car in front of me, they got out and asked if I was okay with a very worried expression on their faces. I said that I was fine. They told me that they got my calls, and I asked them what they had heard. They said that they had heard my voice saying, "Help me," over and over again. One of many ghost experiences by Ecoseey. I am a 19-year-old female. When this happened, I was around 13 or 14. It was a really hot day in mid-July, and I had my friend, we'll call her Liz, over to come and swim and to stay the night since my brothers and dad were gone and it was just my mom and I. At around 10 at night, my mom told Liz and I it was time to come in considering it was getting late and kind of cold. We weren't done messing around in the water, so we decided to go and put our feet in the bath and just talk. All was well and we were having a good time when I heard what I thought was my mom calling my name. "Emily." I said yes, and there was a knock on the bathroom door. I leaned back and opened it slightly and said yes again. No response. I closed the door thinking she was just yelling to make sure we were actually back in the house. About 10 minutes later, Liz and I are still sitting in the tub when I heard my name being called again. "Emily." I was beginning to get frustrated because my mom wasn't answering me when she called, so I got out of the tub, flung the bathroom door open, and shouted, "What? Why do you keep calling my name?" My mom yelled back to me and said, "I'm not, so knock your attitude off." I was uneasy now. We're the only ones in the house, and Liz is with me, so who else could be calling my name? I told myself my mom was messing with me because I get scared so easily, so I closed the door to where there was a crack, and Liz and I sat on the other side of the tub to where we could see the door. Another 5 minutes had passed when the door creaked a little bit further, and my name was said again. I bolted up and said proudly, flinging the door open, "I knew it was you, No one was there. Liz was now very scared, and I was almost soiling myself. We ran down the stairs so fast to tell my mom what was happening. Needless to say, we didn't go back upstairs until the sun was back out. Strange Occurrences by Nathanial Olive. This is my second story from right out of a horror movie. Talking about this actually gives me the chills. This story follows the trip I had 2 years ago when my family went to Hinton, which is in the Rocky Mountains. This little town is very nice looking and quiet, and we have stayed there multiple times the years before what happened there and the year after this story. I will begin with where the events in the story happened. It is a motel called the Bighorn Motel. So we had previously spent the night before at the motel, and it was a peaceful night where nothing had happened to scare us yet. My family and I had been out hiking at a trail just outside of town near Jasper, and when we arrived back in Hinton, we were quite exhausted and promptly fell asleep at about 10 o'clock or so. During the night, at a very late time, the fire alarm in my room went off. I slept through the whole thing without even batting an eye. I'm a very heavy and very deep sleeper. My brother and my mom, however, were awoken by the fire alarm, but the weird thing was we had the windows open, and there was a lot of ventilation in that room, and there was absolutely no smoke in my room. When my mom and brother got up, this was already concerning, and they told me that morning what had happened during the night, and I shrugged it off while the rest of my family was spooked. The next day went smoothly, and there were no more issues with a fire alarm. What happens next freaked the hell out of me. That morning we were packing up and we were gonna go to a Timmy's to get breakfast when we left to go back home. We had parked our car outside of the room and put all of our stuff back into the car and were about to leave when my brother and I realized that our beds were made. We didn't make them, and surely no housekeeper came in since we were still in the room with the door to our adjoining room being closed. This scared me really bad, since when we came back into that little room to see if we left anything in there, the beds were unmade and all messy. What happened next shocked me because the fire alarm went off again while we were in the room. I almost crapped my pants because the fire alarm didn't sound normal. It sounded as if it was playing static instead of the normal fire alarm sound. And amid the static, I swear I could hear a very faint voice. From that day on, we haven't stayed within a 2-block distance of that motel. To the messed up things in that motel, please go to hell. The Man in My Window by Max Chaos. Everything in this story really happened. It all started when I moved in with my sister in her new house. I was given the smallest room, but it had a small door on the wall. I never went in there at first, but curiosity took over me, like I just had to see what was behind that door. When I opened the door, I grabbed a flashlight because it was pretty dark and I couldn't see, and finally went inside the little room. It was filled with cobwebs like no person had been there in a long time. It was creepy in there until I noticed the floorboards arranged like they had had something put under them. I struggled to lift them, but when I did, I really wish that I didn't, because what was there scared me. It was a drawing that looks like it was made by a little kid. It was a drawing of a man that was really tall, with no face. There were words at the bottom of the piece of paper. The man in my window. After I read this, I was more scared than even before, and I was so scared I dropped the paper and left the small room. I didn't sleep for weeks, not because of what I saw, but it felt like I was being watched, or like something bad was going to happen to me or others. When this stopped, I decided to go back into the room. When I did, I found more under the floor. I found pictures that looked like a little girl about 5 years old and an old teddy bear. After that, I left, not wanting to go back again. I tried to calm down and went on my phone while sitting on the bed. When I turned my phone off, I could see a reflection behind me in the window that looked like the man in the drawing, and I turned around to see it was real. I screamed at the top of my lungs till my sister ran to my room to see it too. After that, we moved out of the house and very far away, but I still get the feeling that someone is watching me, and sometimes I see the man in the distance, and to this day, I am still scared of what I saw that day. Thanks again for joining me for these 7 scary stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell to know when the latest horror is available. Want to hear your true or fictional scary story narrated by me on this channel? See the description below for how to submit your story. So as you are contemplating going to sleep, be careful not to look out your window, as you might just glimpse someone or something that has its eye on you. I'll see you in your nightmares. Good night.